From WisPolitics in Madison, you're listening to Capital Chats.
Hello, everybody. This is Kate Morton with WisPolitics here with a Capital Chats podcast brought to you by Spectrum. And today I'm in the office with my colleague Audrey Thiebert to talk about her interview with Sarah Abel, who is going to be the new executive director of the Democratic Party of Wisconsin. And Sarah has previously worked for Congressman Ron Kind and also for former U.S. Senate candidate Sarah Godlewski's campaign. So, Audrey, what are some things that you guys talked about during the interview?
Yeah, thanks, Kate. Sarah and I talked a bit about her new role and a little bit about the new margins in the legislature and how those are going to affect the 2026 elections. We also talked about the upcoming state Supreme Court election and the U.S. Senate race between Eric Hovde and Tammy Baldwin.
Great. Well, let's get into the interview then.
Sarah, thanks so much for joining Cap Chats.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Sarah, you were named to the position Tuesday after serving as Deputy Executive Director during the 2024 cycle. You've also run political campaigns in the past. My first question is just about what from your old positions are you going to carry into your new role as Executive Director, and what do you want to see with the state Dem Party going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I am so excited to be heading up the state party as the executive director moving forward, starting December 1. Really grateful to the past EDs who've come before me. We've built a really strong party. And, before I was here, I have been heavily involved in Democratic politics and in 2020 managed Congressman Ron Kind's reelection campaign. And we were one of 7 Trump districts that a Democrat defended. And so I come from rural Wisconsin. I've worked in rural Wisconsin. And I know me and our chair, Ben Wicklers, both share a big interest in continuing to hold our footprint in rural Wisconsin. So really excited to keep working on that. And we're excited to just continue to focus on improving on the areas that need improvement and building on our successes and moving into 2025 with the Supreme Court race and DPI race. And we're just really focused on 2025 now.
Yeah, great. And I think later in the interview, I'll ask you a little bit about the Supreme Court race. But for now, I just want to talk a little bit about the legislature. Republicans have retained control of the state assembly, but Dems have sort of chipped away at the margin with 54 Republicans and 45 Dems. What do you envision this closer margin meaning for, compromise between the parties in the coming session? How are you thinking about that?
Yeah, and I think we've heard it from our Democratic leaders. We are ready to come to the table and get to work for Wisconsinites in the legislature. And we've seen that the Republican leadership, especially Robin Vos, don't really seem interested in that. And so I think what we're going to be focused on is continuing to support the legislative efforts that our leaders, Greta Neubauer and Diane Hesselbein, continue to push forward. And then also what our governor, Tony Evers, sets out as our priorities and hope that they come to the table. And if they're not willing to come to the table and work on the priorities that Wisconsinites want them to work on, I think we sent a pretty clear message with the voters this cycle that as we chipped away at their majorities, that Wisconsinites are serious about wanting the legislature to get to work and to work with our governor. And so if they aren't willing to do that, these majorities are now slim, and there is very much a path to the majority in both the Assembly and the Senate in 2026. It's something we are taking seriously, and we'll be there every step of the way to make sure they know we're taking it seriously, and we're ready to hold them accountable if they don't.
Yeah, and sort of talking a little bit about the Senate race and the close margins. Republicans also retained control of the Senate, but the Dems again made gains and setting up for a tight race in 2026. What types of efforts is the Democratic Party going to be making to secure that victory? Do you think it's realistic they could gain majorities, and maybe how many seats do you think they could get?
Yeah, 100%. We think there is a clear path to victory to winning these majorities. We worked in close partnership with both the SSDC and ADCC this past cycle, and we intend to do the exact same thing next cycle and in 2026. And I think what it comes down to is that we are recruiting and electing Democrats who get what Wisconsinites are going through and want to do the work for Wisconsinites in the legislature, and aren't there for the partisan roadblocks. And so I think we will continue to just push on those messages and make it clear that Wisconsinites are tired of the GOP games.
Yeah, and moving away from that a little bit, you mentioned the state Supreme Court race earlier. Let's talk a little bit about that. WisDems have endorsed Susan Crawford, and I sort of wanted to know, why do you think she is the best candidate? The last race also had a significant amount of spending with 56 million, which was a national record. Do you expect similar or higher numbers this time around? How are you thinking about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the Supreme Court race, I mean, it is going to be the first race in since November election, since the Trump presidency again. So I think there's going to be a lot of attention once again on Wisconsin and Wisconsin elections. Just I don't think the nation can get enough of us. And so I think there will be another focus on Wisconsin. And I think what it really comes down to is that we don't want someone like Brad Schimmel in the Supreme Court, who has extreme views, who has worked under Scott Walker to try and repeal the Affordable Care Act and take pre-existing condition protections for pre-existing conditions against hundreds of thousands of Wisconsinites. We continue to have to be the last line of defense for women's rights to choose and make decisions about their own body. We just saw the Supreme Court discussing that very issue not too long ago. So I think we are heavily focused on making sure that we continue to have a pro-democracy, pro-freedom, and Supreme Court moving forward.
Yeah, and just going back to maybe the spending, are you envisioning that sort of like spending again? Yeah.
I mean, I don't, I'll be honest, we're not going to get into numbers of what we're looking at doing, but I mean, Wisconsin and Dems are known for their ground game, and we're known for supporting candidates that align with our values. So I think we will continue to do those efforts in every election as they come.
Yeah, definitely. And then last question is just about the U.S. Senate race in the November election. Republican Eric Hovde repeatedly criticized the Dems for putting Thomas Leager on the ballot and said that's why he lost. Do you think that Tammy Baldwin would have won if Leager wasn't on the ballot?
Yeah, I mean, Tammy Baldwin won because she has been showing up and working for and overperforming the rural communities in Wisconsin, and but not just in election years, in every year. And so I think we saw her run a true 72 county campaign, and she's had the accomplishments. She's not only talking to the talk, she's walking the walk for Wisconsin voters. I don't think that has anything to do with it. I think Hovde was an incredibly flawed candidate who spent years in California. And yeah, I don't think that has anything to do with it.
Yeah, well, thanks. And again, that's Sarah Abel, the new executive director of the Democratic Party of Wisconsin. Sarah, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you again.
Thanks.
All right, Audrey, thank you so much for sharing that interview with us. If our listeners want to learn more about state politics, they can head to our website at wispolitics.com. In the meantime, I'm Kate Morton.
And I'm Audrey Thiebert.
And thanks for listening to WisPolitics Capital Chats, brought to you by Spectrum.